not read all the preamble of in-person and remote meetings, because I think we've heard it a bunch of times. We're here to open the planning board meeting for let's see, what are we calling this? MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District Subcommittee meeting for July 16th, 2024. Do we have a motion to open this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second, we do. Any discussion? All in favor, Mr. Woodhams.
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence.
Aye.
Aye, 3 in favor, no one opposed, motion carried. Subcommittee meeting is open. All right. This is our second subcommittee meeting, right? Of this group? Or if we had more? Third.
We've got meeting minutes from 2 meetings.
Yeah. So our goal tonight, I think, is to try to work through what it is we think we ought to do as a planning board in terms of MBTA communities. I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people in the last month or so, just to get a feel from, and I've gotten emails and letters from different people about MBTA communities. And so I guess tonight, if we could try to go through maybe either a number of things. Number, what's our charter? What are the sites? What should we do? Should we go for pre-approval? Shouldn't we go for pre-approval? Do we have a site that we feel good about? How does that play out with the planning board? We have a meeting tomorrow night, and then meetings into August and September. Probably have to get something done. Certainly, if we're not going to do pre-approval, we have to get something done in the next 2 or 3 months, so that if it needed to go to town meeting in November, I'm not sure what the posting date for that is, Rachel. What's the?
Yeah, I don't know the official date as of yet.
Rough-
It's usually the first Monday
Okay, All right.
of November.
all right.
Mike, can I raise a potentially thorny issue?
Sure.
I had a call from a citizen who may probably sitting at the meeting. He said that if we're going to split the property that we overlay, we have to go through the pre-approval. Is that accurate?
I'm seeing Rachel shake her head no. Mr. Inman's shaking his head no.
You mean if we
Okay.
do parcel?
You know, in order to get the reduced, density on the second parcel, somebody who talked to me was under the impression that that was required.
If that is what the board decides, they want to have one of these districts be the mandatory mixed use to get that approval for the 25% reduction, yes, we are required to submit that prior to the town meeting vote. But if you just,
Okay, so we have to submit it prior, but do we have to give them enough time to get back to us and approve it prior?
correct, it's that 90 days prior to.
And so the deadline on that would be August 1st. For the submittal.
Depending on when that November town meeting is, yeah. So the August 7th meeting is your last chance to really vote on something.
To vote on it.
For you guys.
To be able to submit it
to
for prior
submit it
approval.
to-
Okay,
for prior
that was
approval.
one of the questions, and there's probably more questions than I have answers for in some of this stuff. If you guys are willing to oblige me for a minute, I'd like to go through, because I think I don't have all the answers on some of this stuff, and I may be hearing or putting information in that isn't accurate. So maybe as a group, we can just go through it and make sure that the understanding of not only the bylaw, but the assumptions and what we're hearing are all.
I've done, yeah.
I know.
I'm going through it the 10th time. It's cool, man. That's what I'm here
That's
for.
good. All right, I'm looking at a PowerPoint that I threw together a week and a half ago. After I had some time to kind of think through all of the stuff that's been discussed to date, I read through the bylaw again, I read through the minutes. And these are not all of them, so if you want to insert some other questions on any of these topics, let's do that as we go. The first one is on adjacent communities. I was really getting literal with the words. if feasible, so it says on the front cover, it says the MBTA community has no land within a half a mile of transit. Multifamily district should, if feasible, be located in an area with reasonable access to transit. That one stuck out to me because we're not within a half a mile of a transit, I don't think. If
Correct.
feasible
We are an
means
adjacent community.
if you can do it, you put it closer to transit than not, so I'm not sure that we're required under this word to put this, we can put this anywhere in town.
Correct.
Is that?
Yep.
The reading you get to? Okay,
Yeah, we are an adjacent community because we do not have any transit
Yep.
stations within our district, within our boundaries. And there are none within that circle of a half mile that fall
Right.
within us. So we can put them anywhere.
so it doesn't have to go by 495. It doesn't have to go next to the,
Nope.
or the Franklin town line or anything like that, okay. But it does say, development practice is consistent with sustainable development near existing downtown or village centers. But, and that would, I think that came out of your PowerPoints, Rachel, with adjacent communities, so. I was just trying to, because I had heard someone say, hey, we have to put it next to near the Franklin line or the Norfolk line, because it has to be near the transit stations. Okay, good. I was just going through thinking about what the planning board decision options are. We could do one site, we could do several sites, I guess, but when I read reasonable size in a definition, reasonable size was, I believe I saw 50 acres.
The total district has to be 50 acres. It can be more. You can split it up into at least one 25-acre district or five 5-acre districts totaling 50, or you can do one 50-acre district.
So it's not requiring it to be 50.
It's requiring it to be
I mean,
50
but
in the
total,
total,
in
yes,
total,
you
but
need to have
not-
50 acres.
Okay,
And you have to have, one of them has to be 25 contiguous.
If
and
you
the
wanna
rest of
split
can
it
be
up.
Split.
Yes,
well, that's good. I put here general compliance with the adjacent communities bylaw. I don't, general compliance to me means something different than, 100% in compliance, and we're gonna do the best we can. So it seems like general compliance would work. You mentioned, Rachel, I think we have to draft conditions or requirements once we select sites of what we would expect around those sites from a development perspective.
yes, so I have drafted a bylaw that could probably be a little bit more, like if we put in design guidelines, I really would have liked to have had some design guidelines associated with it, which would help really hone that down. But there is a draft bylaw out there. Depending on what you decide for an area, areas may need to be tweaked within that bylaw.
How far can we take that? So if you said, well, you're gonna have a center in your development, you're gonna have walking trails, we can set all that like we did with 55 and older community, right?
Yeah,
Can we go so far as to say that development, and this is maybe gets into linkage, needs to improve our water treatment and our water system by putting a tower and a pump station and
depends on where it's put, you could put something in there which is in all of them, which it's in if you allow it to be by site plan approval, already within Article 7 of your site plan approval requirements in the zoning bylaw, require them to prove that they are meeting your water, public safety, the impact on that is not gonna be so egregious. And if it is, they have to provide improvements to that, which is for any of the projects that come forward to you.
so if it was in West Wrentham, which I'm not saying it should be or shouldn't be, but we have water issues, we have fire station issues. How far could we go with requiring
It's
that
some-
development to address some of those?
It's something that's already required within your existing zoning bylaw. Within your existing site plan approval regulations, it requires them to address that issue and provide evidence that they are And if they're not, by way of you, us sending a request for comments to DPW, the water department, and they say, no, your 2-inch line, I'm just making stuff up because I'm not a water person, is not gonna, be able to supply this, 500 unit development. You need to do X this size and this amount, and that would be addressed through there. And then it shows, nope, you're not, you are creating an impact to our water system. You have to improve that. You can,
But
I think
only
you can put,
if we can.
you can put wording in there that more strongly addresses that. Yes.
Okay.
You can't, how I have read the guidelines and, law is that this bylaw can't, ask for things so outrageous or egregious that it wouldn't, that you are not asking for other projects. Like, oh, well, you have to, I'm just throwing things out there. They're like parking, you have to have, charging stations for every 5. Well, there's a lot of other projects that have parking spots that we don't ask for, charging stations. So maybe that should be something that's within the regular bylaw too.
Yeah.
That was just something I just pulled off the top of my head.
I was thinking about Ledgeview, and I think the town got shell gamed on that one, because we ended up having to spend $5 million to upgrade a line that in my opinion, development should have had to do, but because they got their Mass Works grant, and then there's a tie down.
Madison.
Madison, town ended up paying for that. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
limit the impact on the town on any of this stuff, and if we can put into the development criteria things that are very clear about what they're gonna have to do versus subjective,
Mhm.
that might help us as a town not have to get into those situations where we end up funding stuff.
Sure, yeah.
One of the things that complicated Ledgeview too was the 40B, because that was out of our hands. We were not allowed to, we as a planning board weren't allowed to do anything with that part of it.
So we talked about state pre-approval. We'd have to submit something by August 7th, said.
I need you guys to, by August 7th, for me to move that forward. Again, I don't know what the town meeting date is. But that's pretty much in our head. That's what we've talked about is the drop dead date for pre-approval.
And then if we present something, we're only taking 1 of 3 actions, correct?
1 of 2. You, so the state law, you say that no action, that actually the state perceives that to be an unfavorable action. So you literally just you're making 2. It's either favorable or negative.
Is that in a state law someplace?
There's
It
case
actually
law
says
in
that?
one of the handouts that I provided through DHC.
Seems like there's a differentiation between them. Negative action is no, we don't want it. No action is we're not sure.
Okay,
I don't know.
there's a couple of case law that
Is there?
say differently, so it's in that DHCD handout.
November 4th is first Monday of.
Okay.
But the next day is election day, so I don't know if we're gonna have
Oh, that's right.
town meeting the day before the election.
Oh.
But it'll be at least, it'll at least be. Or unless they kick it to the 11th, I'm not sure what they're gonna do. I still think that. All things being equal, this should have its own. It should
It's
have its
good.
own town meeting, because this is gonna be an all-night affair. The time we get this to town meeting, the amount of. Discussion that's gonna happen that night, I think is gonna be.
It's a good point.
Very
I can bring that up with,
Well, it's been brought up and they're not fond of the idea only because it's already such a busy year because of the elections. It's a lot of strain on the clerk's office is how it was explained to me. To have a separate town meeting just for this.
assume there's a curfew of some kind at town meeting?
Town meeting, no,
No,
town meeting is,
has to be
there
voted
is,
to.
there is the bylaw regarding board meetings that we have to comply with. Town meeting, when they pass that law, town meeting that bylaw, town meeting was exempted from it, so town meeting can go all night.
Michael, my guess the town meeting will be on Monday, November 18th. I don't think they're gonna have the first Monday, because that's the day.
Oh, yeah, and the 11th
They won't
is
have the 11th
Veterans
because
Day.
that's a National holiday, Veterans
Right,
Day.
right.
The 18th is the first Monday that's available, and that's not the week of Thanksgiving, which is the following Monday. So by process of elimination, it's probably Monday the
Probably
18th.
Okay.
So we bought a couple of extra.
Extra,
There
see,
you go. See, looking better already.
Gosh, thank you.
we have one positive event out of the meeting tonight. That's all we need.
Thank you
Motion
for
to-
carrying around.
Thanks, Leo.
Motion to adjourn. Before,
Whoa.
before we go next,
Yeah.
here we go. Sites.
Not so.
So this lists the sites. I went through each site and just kind of put if maybe we flip to page 3. So Rachel, you said we can't use the Wrentham Development Center because it's excluded. That is absolutely a law. Is that have we confirmed it? Can we confirm it? How would we go about saying that that might be and should be considered as an option for an overlay?
We can consider it, but it's an excluded parcel of land, so it's not.
Excluded
And by the guidelines, by the state guidelines.
guidelines,
Yeah.
not the physical, is not a,
The law, so, yeah, I'm not gonna go into debating which is, Which is
law, which
lawful.
guideline.
you know, which is, I'm not gonna I made my, going through this, the law created guidelines. The guidelines say this is an excluded site. Any state, town-owned land is excluded, and protected open space as well.
It can be used, but you have to get pre-approval from the state to be
Correct.
able to include it, right? And
Yeah.
At this point, that's not gonna happen.
And I mean, in the 5.5 years I've been here, Kevin's been here 7 years, we've each individually and together tried to reach out to the development center. And every time it goes nowhere. To try and with the master plan, trying to figure out what their long-term plans were, so.
So it's not an absolute no, but it's a very unlikely.
pretty strong no, but it's not an absolute no. And does that, if we could get it, is that a site that would make sense? That's kind of my, do you try to go after it and fight for it?
Well, in 2002, the town did rezone that whole area to be a CRISP, conservation, recreation, schools and parks. In that exact case with, the state is gonna sell this someday, we need to have zoning in place that's not gonna allow it to be developed. So, just understanding that
Yeah.
the town has already voted, but if you wanna.
No,
vote to
that's
not
fine.
have
I
it,
forgot
then,
about that.
That's up
So
to
that's
you
a
guys.
crisp zone, okay.
But that's also, we'd have to talk to somebody at the state, and it's not just the people that run the development center. They can't say, oh yeah, sure, we'll do this. It has to be the people that actually own the property, which is DCAM, Department of Capital Asset and Management, something, I forget for second M stands for. Maintenance?
Yeah, something like that. I put down some notes on the town center, and I don't know if these are right or not. So we know we got a development coming in at 8 units an acre. He's sent a letter to us that said he'll do that. I do have a concern that if he doesn't build it or doesn't get it permitted, that could change. So I'd want to be real careful if we're gonna overlay that. That somebody couldn't come in and say, well, it's not 8, you don't have a maximum money thing, it's gonna be 15 like the overlay says. So that does concern me that.
Well, I've never, in any of the proposals, recommendations that have been provided, I've never said that should be 15 units per acre. I've always said that it should be 8 units per acre, which is then why the next parcel had
Right.
to be,
If
and that would
we-
be the
if-
mandatory mixed use
If
as
we
well.
say that part of the overlay cannot be more than 8, that carries whether it's this developer or the next developer, right?
Correct.
Because that's,
Okay,
but
Yeah.
we have to offset that by doing 22 somewhere else.
something, yeah, right, there's a higher number.
But
we
it's
have
not
to
like
do.
if we say 8 and then they sell it and somebody else comes in with the development, they say, well, we want to do 15.
Okay.
We've
Yeah.
already established.
All right,
Right, I mean, if you
overlay.
wanna have that be the 50, if you want all 50 and be there,
Nope.
that,
remember they came in with 15 units an acre and we
right, yes.
cut that down a lot. So that would mean 22 acres somewhere else, but don't we get some relief on the numbers too?
Yes, so if we get the pre-approval for the mandatory mixed use, you are allowed a 25% reduction, and that's about, I wrote it down, I think it's 187. So that means we have to have 563 units. The other zone would have to create, 563, have the possibility to create it.
But at 22 units an acre, which is
Right, you'd have to have.
Much more
It's have to
dense.
be the 15, yeah. In the end, you would still have to have 15 units per acre.
so because we're doing 8 there, and if that's what the developer does, that feels like, is there any downside to that?
We'd really need to take a look at the bylaw and make sure that it is putting on paper exactly what you want. In the, worst case scenario, that criterion ends up pulling out, that's, doesn't seem like they are, but that's why I really want to make sure that that bylaw says, like you've said before, like the intent, but black and white, what you want to see. And make it really mirror what they've proposed and kind of like what you are agreeing to, what you guys have worked so hard to get to with this developer.
We don't have a maximum number in our existing bylaws for that,
Correct. It's a minimum of 5 units per acre.
which if you put the overlay in, does that trump that we don't have a maximum in, so it only can be 8?
Correct.
We can actually
Well,
write it that
They can
way.
choose, yeah. like,
But
if
they can
we
use the
create-
underlying
if we
zoning.
Create the MMU, the mandatory mixed use, we would probably change that underlying zoning, to make it, that's it. That's all you can do, the max of 8 units per acre. If that's what you want to do, I'll talk to town council to figure out the best way to do it,
Would we have to redraft our zoning bylaws, the underlying zoning?
Yeah,
Yeah, and get that approved.
yeah,
Otherwise, they could,
yeah,
there's no max.
correct. Well, currently there is no max,
Other than us
And we
telling them
can-
they can't
Yes,
do
right.
that.
Exactly. If there's residential, it has to be 5 units at a minimum per acre within the existing village zone.
So Chuck's thinking here.
Well, I thought I thought I had a handle on it, and now you just said something to me. I just want to back up, and sorry if I'm being dense.
No,
I'm gonna split the zoning into 2 parts. This is town center, this is everything else. I'm not worried about that.
yes,
Town center currently has minimum 5, no maximum.
correct.
If we come in with the MBTA overlay and we say, okay, this is gonna be our 25 acres, whatever,
Mhm.
this can be no more than 8.
Yeah.
We still have to rewrite our underlying zoning.
That's
Doesn't-
how I
doesn't-
believe it, how it's
So
been.
setting
If you're
the,
doing a mandatory mixed use if you're doing a mandatory mixed
okay.
use zone, it requires the change to the underlying zoning
well, now.
to create a mandatory mixed use.
And when we create mandatory mixed use,
Mhm.
does that apply to everything that we include in the MBTA zone, or are we saying this parcel is gonna be mandatory mixed use, this parcel be just,
It's everything that you're including within that,
Within-
that MBTA mandatory.
so all the
mixed
overlay
use.
stuff, if you're doing it in 2 parcels, it'll all be mandatory mixed use?
No, I'm sorry, just the downtown.
Okay,
Yeah, so that would be a sub-district. That would be sub-district A, we'll call it.
okay,
Sub-district B through Z, I know that doesn't add up math-wise, can have different densities depending on how you feel comfortable with it.
just a hypothetical, so we have this underlying zone
Mhm.
over here for our town center. What happens if we take this one and we say, this is gonna be our mandatory mixed use? Don't call that the mandatory mixed use, even though the underlying zoning calls for mixed use as being required for part of it.
Yeah,
So we still get to keep that and make that mandatory mixed use and still get a reduction in units.
if you have a mandatory mixed use district and it gets approved, you can get a 25% reduction.
So we could theoretically keep the underlying zoning in the center of town.
Yeah.
Just
The way
as it is.
Yep, not touch it.
But the overlay says no more than 8 units.
Yeah,
Probably the underlying needs to be too,
yes.
though.
Well, I mean, he is saying that is not, downtown is not gonna
Oh.
be mandatory mixed.
We're
use.
not gonna
It's
call
just
that
one of
mandatory, we're
the-
not gonna call that
One of the
mandatory mixed use.
sub-districts.
Right, we're not gonna call that mandatory mixed use for
Yep.
the purpose of the MBTA.
Yes.
We're gonna call this the mandatory mixed use for the purpose of,
Yes,
but the underlying zoning for this still requires mixed use. So they couldn't just go in and,
that part is a little bit different because
okay,
if you, whatever you want, they can either do the underlying zoning or the overlay. They can't pick and choose from one or the
okay,
other.
okay, all right.
So.
I just
that
wanted
would
to
be
make
the
sure
only
that
thing.
I.
We
you know,
can
I'm
do
just trying
that.
to figure out.
Yeah,
what
you
we
could have that
how
be a
we-
sub-district, not a mandatory mixed use, just have it be one of the sub-districts. But whatever you want them to do within that overlay, you would need to, include. So it's not just
You would need to include it in your underlying zone,
in the overlay.
in the overlay.
Yeah, yeah. Cause a person, if they wanna do a project, they're either gonna activate the overlay zone, whatever's used in there, or the underlying zone.
So logistically, we would have to bring to town floor on the same night the change to the zoning for a maximum of 8 units per acre for town center. Have that approved before this came
Then
up.
we could do.
No,
Right.
What?
we'd have to change the underlying zoning before we approved to 8 units per acre.
No, you can do it, you can have it all be part of the one, change. Out of the one zoning amendment process on town meeting, you can change all of that stuff.
So
But-
we could change the underlying zoning as part of the whole
Yeah, cause it's,
overlay process.
yeah.
Okay,
Is it voted as one entire change, or can people vote on?
We can do it
Parts.
anyway, yeah.
I just wanna make sure that
Yeah.
that didn't get approved and the overlay did, and all of a sudden we're again, we're
Right.
stuck at 15.
Exactly,
That's my biggest concern about town. If we can figure out a way to make sure it stays at 8 and can't go past that,
Right.
that's the development that we're looking at
Agreed.
and want to approve. I'd hate for somebody to be able to do something that's at 15.
absolutely agree. Jim, do you have any comments?
No, I'm just taking in how you're going over this. So it sounds like, Mike, what you think is the best protection for the town to get what it wants in the town center is to find other places to do this overlay district, so we continue on and there's no incentive for anybody to change or do more than what we're considering in that town center area.
No, I'm saying I'm not opposed to the town center as long as we eliminate the risk of somebody being able to do 15 units an acre. Anything more than the development that's coming in that we think is the right development. If that can happen, then why not, right? We're getting 8 units an acre anyways. Why don't we put it on top and run with it? As long as there's no chance that if something changes, somebody can drop 15 units an acre there in the center of town. That's my biggest concern with the town center.
Yeah, the only issue, if you just do the, we're gonna call it traditional, even though there's nothing traditional about this. If you just go with the traditional, a sub-district of, MBTA Communities Overlay District at the 8 units per acre, you're not gonna have that mixed use portion of it. Now, there's some things that they can put on the ground floor as part of this, multifamily overlay district. But it's very small items, so, like medical, some like arts, makerspace, cafe, very small. Not to the extent that your downtown Village Zone B bylaw exists, so that would be my only concern about that, if putting the overlay, so we have.
So does that mean you don't get the reduction then?
Well, this is just, he was talking about putting the mandatory mixed use
Oh,
somewhere.
somewhere else,
So
okay.
we just did, yeah.
yeah, I was throwing it out there just to see if it made any.
I'm
sense
glad
to
you,
try
no,
to
I'm
do it
glad
that
you
way.
asked the question though. Trust me, I'm sure.
Huh.
I've been living this for the past 3 years,
And are
so.
we saying 25 acres at 8 units an acre is the right number, or is there more acreage at 8 units? What's the development coming in at?
I think we did it with both of the parcels down there, so 43 and 55, which comes out to be about 47 acres in total. 30% of that is designated as mandatory mixed use. So then you still have to, how the guidelines law is stated is still very confusing. You still have to pick up that acreage somewhere else. You get a reduction in the number of units, but you still have to create that acreage somewhere else, especially because we're doing it at 8 units per acre. We'll have to spread that a little bit more. So that's why the 495 area, it's still, you know, about, I think, 50 acres in total.
You have to pick up all of those acres,
Yeah,
so we're getting 8 units.
But
an
you
acre.
get the reduction in units per acre.
correct.
But we still have to do that reduction at 22 units an acre someplace.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds. Put that on a chart. Is that a benefit? I mean, I understand we get a reduction, but now all of a sudden we gotta take 50, we got 50 acres, now we gotta find another 50.
Yeah,
And,
or however many sub-districts you want to do at, you know, 5 acres, you know,
but do we have to do those? No, we only have to get to 563. At 22 units per acre, whatever that is, so.
yeah. If you want to put it in another whole location, that's the, you know, like, yeah. You know, like you want to do the 50 there, you're still, yeah, your average density has to be 15 units per acre. So however many sub-districts you do, the average has to be 15 units per acre. I've got two math people in the audience too.
We do. So if we do 50 acres, 8 per acre, then we do another 50. That's only 2,
Yes.
because it's gotta be average.
But it's, if you get that reduction, it's a little bit
I have
less.
to leave, but I'm glad you're wrestling with this question now. This makes me feel very good.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram.
Thanks, Lou.
50 times 22. I should know this in my head, but I'm not gonna do it. Is 1,100. So we're actually only, so how does that work?
So
58, we gotta pick up 50 acres, we gotta do 22 acres, but we only need half of that roughly
yeah,
in units. But 50 acres at 22 units an acre is 1,100 units. So do you only need 25 acres at 22? How's that?
yeah. Yeah. I'm trying
So
to
is
think
the-
how. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Does that mean so the 750, what's the magic number? The 750 units or the units per acreage for 50 acres? Like which is the magic number? Which is the one that doesn't move?
All of it.
Okay.
But that
You
would
always-
mean,
You always need 50 acres.
And you
Okay.
always, they're allowed.
They have to have, yeah, they have to have the capacity to create 750 units. And that has to have an average density of 15 units per acre
but you can't,
across the
if
sub-district.
you have to have another 50 acres at 22, that's 1,100,
Yeah, so it's actually, we actually, as part of,
then you don't,
correct, yeah, you don't need as much of that.
so then what gives, to Jim's point?
Yeah.
What number
So if you're
do
doing.
you reduce? Cause you can do that 50 acres at 11 units an acre,
Yeah, so that's it,
but that's,
the number that. So there's two different paths here too, like, we're talking about the mandatory mixed use. You're getting that reduction if you get approved for that mandatory mixed use.
I get that.
180
I'm
cents.
talking about the balance.
Yeah, and so you need to make that up, so you have 8 units per acre, you need to make, that average needs to be made up in a different area. And you're absolutely right, the acreage will reduce. Has to create that 500 and whatever number.
But then we don't have 50 acres.
Right. Right, it
You-
could be less than 50 acres because you've already taken some acreage somewhere else and done some things. So if you said it's 47 acres in the center of town, 30% of that is mixed use. And we're gonna claim 30% of that, let's just call it 15 acres. at no more than 8 units an acre. With me so far?
No, I'm not. Can you just say that again? Cause I wanna
So she
write
said it's 47 acres in the center of town. She said
47,
30% of that is designated mixed use by the town.
okay, 8 times 47 then? 47
So,
acres.
you know, 1/3 of 47 is roughly 15. So let's just say that's 15 acres at 8 units an acre. 8 times 15 is, I don't know, 80, 8 times 5 is 40, 120 units. So it seems to me to get to the 750 units, we need whatever acreage at the units per acreage. If it's 22, if that goes up to 22 units per acre, is that what you're telling me, Rachel?
You just threw a lot of numbers out.
So,
I'm
I know.
sorry. If we do the 8 units and we lock that in as our mixed use, did you say the rest of this stuff has to go up to 22 units an acre?
Cause that's because you're setting your mandatory mixed use, if you're setting your mandatory mixed use in the downtown at 8 units per acre, yes, you have to.
Okay, great. So if we've got 120 units that we now have in that downtown mixed use area, and then we need 750, that seems like 630 left, divide by 22, how many acres do we need to set aside for that? Sounds like about 30 acres, 32 acres, something like that.
Yes.
Is my math track on that, or?
let me ask you,
Yes.
let me see if I've got this, because we took 750 acres, I mean, units,
Units.
and took a 25% reduction.
Yes,
So that was minus 187, which got us to 563. If we take the town center at 8 units an acre
yes,
on 25 acres, that's 200 units. Right?
sure.
Don't you take the 200 off the 563 to see what your net is?
Mm-hmm.
So you need 363. Net at 22 units per acre.
Sounds like a dozen or 15 acres, something in that range.
Something like that. You only need like 17 acres or something. Because, and if you say, and if they're saying we need 50 acres, and we're saying we need 17 acres, how do you reconcile the two?
Mm-hmm. I want to say, I thought I saw this in some of the more dense communities. They had something about this. No.
750 reduced by 25% means we need 563. At 25 acres, at 8 units an acre, that's 200, 363. But we have to do those at 22 units per acre.
It seems like if we're gonna require them to build a quote unquote town center in that area, right? Or some components thereof, in order to have the new development comply with the intent of the law, we'd maybe give them a couple extra acres for green space or whatever. I mean, because we're generous people and the town wants a nice area. So if all we need to give them is, what did you say, Mike? Like 13, 14 acres?
And that's about 17 acres.
17 acres, so we give them 20. And they got 3 extra acres to spread things out a little bit. But, you know, 22, the thing about that is, we think 15 units an acre is bad. Now we're cramming 22 units an acre into someplace. You're basically authorizing a mid-rise somewhere in town, right?
Well, and that's the other thing, I just offhand, it'd be great to see what 22 or 15 units an acre it looks like. But I still can't reconcile what the state's asking for. If we get this reduction, we still need to move the 50 acres someplace else, and we don't, that math doesn't.
Yeah, and I'm just
Doesn't all
probably
work.
not explaining it, correctly.
I don't know if we can give them 20, Jim. I think if the 50 acres holds up, we have to designate 50 acres someplace.
We have to say, well, 50 total.
Well, if we
so
designated 20 in town, can we designate another 30?
35 somewhere.
So I don't, that's,
The law says 50 acres, 750 units total.
Still need to find another thing.
if you take the town center reduction, you need to find another 50. That's what we heard.
A total of 50 in addition to the reduction.
That's the question.
And I'm trying to find a better explanation than what I'm giving with
Okay.
math numbers, so.
No, this is good.
I know, I like this is great.
Are you just saying that?
No, I'm serious, yeah.
Okay.
I like it when people ask me questions. It's great. What, me be facetious?
It's just, it doesn't make sense.
Okay,
But-
so 25% of the unit capacity listed in appendix A, which in this, that's saying as an adjacent community, we have 50 acres. This consideration shall not affect the minimum land area, acreage, or contiguity requirements for a multifamily zoning district
Okay.
otherwise required by the.
So it still has to be
Probably
50.
not more than.
That says a total of 50. So if we did 25 uptown, you have to find 25 somewhere else. And then that at the 17 to the 25 isn't that big a discrepancy.
Yeah, right.
Matter of fact,
15 units.
I'd be
Do that.
22 units an acre,
But this 363 divided by. the
22,
other 20. If we do 25 and we need another 20.
right?
So it'd be divided by 25, right?
Oh, 360,
3 divided by 25.
yeah, I was using you needed 363 units divided by 22 units per acre, not 25 acres.
No, because I know what you're saying. You're still thinking in the density per acre, but it's not, that density has changed because we got a reduction in units, right? So if we're granted a reduction in units, we still have to do 50 acres. We've got 200 here at 8 per acre for what,
25 acres.
25 acres. Then we take that 563, which is our total reduced number, subtract that 200 out,
363.
363 needs to go on the other 25 acres. So it wouldn't be, if, it would only be 22 if we were not getting a reduction in units.
Let me just see something here. So 363 divided by 25 acres. That's only 14.5 units per acre. We have to meet 22 units per acre.
No, we don't, because we're getting a
We have-
reduction in.
You have to have
units.
an average
50.
of 15 units per acre across the two sub-districts. So the sub-districts, however many you have.
So is it on the
densities
net
need
or the
to average
gross?
out.
Is
The
it on-
densities need to just average out on.
Is it 563 then has to average out?
This is state math. It's not working. No, seriously. If we were not looking for a reduction.
Yeah.
And we're gonna split it between two 25-acre units, and this is gonna be 8, this would have to be 22. Right? Cause that's 15 per acre,
Yeah.
50 acres,
Yeah.
750 total units.
Yeah,
Yes.
We're not going for 750 total units, we're going for 563, because we
Yeah.
get that reduction.
yes.
And if this is 8 units, then for 200 units at 8 an acre, then you've got 25 acres that you've got to fit 363 units in. It's not 22 units an acre, it's 14 something.
Yeah,
So then you've got 8 and 14, doesn't average out to 15,
15.
but you're never gonna get it to average out to 15 because you've gotten a reduction in.
Correct.
So does that average of 15 change because we get the reduction in units? I think that's where the key is. Do we, because we get the reduction in units, does that reduce the overall required density? If we have to spread it out over 50 acres, it should by default, it mean that the total density is not gonna be 15 because you're getting a reduction in units.
That's a really good question, because that math comes out to 14 and a half.
Yeah.
The other math comes out to. That's two.
If we were not getting the reduction in units, you're absolutely right. This would have, if this was 25 at 8, this would have to be 22 at 8. or 25 at 22. But because you're getting that reduction, but you still have to designate the same acreage. Your overall units are being reduced, your overall density in that would have to be.
But then your average units per acre are way less than even the 15.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying.
You're sitting at
That's where
somewhere
the question is.
between,
If we're getting a reduction in
11.
units, are we still required to meet that 15?
Divided by
everywhere.
50.
And how could that possibly?
Right, right,
all right,
right.
we're all in the same math.
Is it making sense? Is my question? Not that I'm expecting an answer, but is my question making sense?
Well, it does and it doesn't, because that is 11 units per acre on average. What that math tells you with the reduction is 11,
Right,
not,
they're allowing us to reduce our overall number of units, so.
but not our units per acre.
That you can't do both.
The average,
I-
the average units per acre, the average of the two, however many, in this case, we're using 2 sub-districts. Right?
Okay.
The average of those sub-districts, whatever the unit density is, has to be 15.
You don't come up to 15
Okay.
because of the reduction.
Right. So
That's
now-
what we're saying. How does
So then
the,
if you, so you get the reduce, you've got 8 per acre for 25 acres over here. If you have to have 22 units here. You've got 363 at 22 units per acre, it's not gonna be another 25 acres, it's only gonna be
it can't be.
14 or whatever. Now we're not in compliance because we don't have 50 acres. So somewhere the compliant, that 15 per acre, 50 acres has to change if we're being allowed to reduce the number of units.
Mhm.
And where are we allowed to do that change?
It has to be with the units per acre. I
Right,
think that's I think we're down to, with the reduction.
What's
we're down to
because
11.
we're doing gross units down to net units and the acreage.
right, the net units is changing, but
You have the fixed
The area.
You have the fixed area and the net number of units. With 2 fixed points, the third one has to change, right? Units per acre.
yeah.
If
something-
that's not true, there's no. You
Right.
have to get 0 benefit, right?
That's kind of,
Exactly, you're right.
so Rachel,
Are you giving me some direction?
we need a clarification on the reduction and how that all plays out with the math we just did. And Chuck will send you the math formulas. No, they're not that. No, they're
I'll
very,
write
here,
down what I just asked.
Yeah,
but it comes out to 11.
yeah, no,
I
this
think
is
we're
great.
all in agreement that
Mhm.
with that reduction, you can't get to 15 units an acre.
Yeah, no, this is great.
Well, you could, but then we would be forcing far more than the mandatory 750. And
Correct.
why would we
Right.
do that if we don't have? What's the point of getting a reduction in units and then being told, well, you still have to.
You
put the
gotta
same
do,
number-
now you gotta do
You're not
1100
getting a
because you need the,
Right, you're not getting a reduction in units if you still have to allow for the same number.
I thought I was the only one confused. All right, we noodled that one out.
Love this. This is great.
Okay.
The
Page
old thinking
3.
caps on.
Page
No,
3,
we're on-
page 3 of 27.
Thanks.
I think some of these can be wiped out pretty quick, so I will just. Well, I guess some of this changes depending on what the answers to that is. If we need 363 units on 17 acres or some less, how many acres would that be? 25 acres. That's
Yeah.
less than 14 and a half.
Sue Connor, thank you.
Then maybe the development that's being gravelled out might be an opportunity. I don't know. 363, it's still 363 units.
Yeah.
Still a lot of units.
Still, but it would
He was
also
Talking
be,
about 100, I think he was looking at doing a senior living community after that, and I think he said he could do like 100 units on it.
My biggest concern about 1A Wampum Corner is changing the character. So when you put your map together, you were kind of taking zoning spots along Route 1A. I
Well,
could
I'm
see,
thinking all of
Right.
that, all of that being an overlay.
I could
and-
see a developer coming in and buying up lots if it made sense financially, and then all of a sudden we got 750 units, and my bigger concern is somebody pulls properties together,
Hmm.
so the setbacks don't become an issue. If they did a 1 acre parcel, setbacks are very restrictive. If they did a
Mhm.
5 acre parcel, it become less restrictive.
Gotcha.
10 acre, all of a sudden, a bigger piece of property that they could get, pick a number, 15 units an acre on becomes more viable.
Mhm.
So I just get concerned about 1A Wampum Corner as changing the character. I know it's a little
Yeah, so.
eclectic down there, but I'd hate to see that be the place.
What's the
where we end
master
up-
plan say that we're looking to do in the Wampum Corner area?
Expand, I think in a lot of those areas, it talked about sort of expanding and highlighting some of those, neighborhood, I call them neighborhood businesses districts. I know we wouldn't want to do that out in Sheldonville over at the PJ Mart. It's definitely not something that I would look at. And that's only, I mean, within your open space plan, within your master plan, West Wrentham, it is really nice area. I mean, the scenery out there is beautiful, you know, it's a really great example, and it would be wonderful if we can preserve that in some way. You know, the Abbey has some really great vistas from up there. It's a pretty sloped site and you can see a lot of, it's just very pretty. You know, but then, yeah, they would have to improve, the water. Either way, they're gonna
I
have to
don't-
improve water, find septic, you know,
Well,
and I mean, you're,
that's a
but
big piece of this is
they're
that,
gonna have to
you're
do
gonna
septic on site.
yeah, on-site septic for,
Takes away from the developable area.
Right.
So, but that doesn't mean that, oh, hey, I've got a 5 acre lot, I've gotta make up an acre for just the septic. That means, oh, I can up my unit capacity. No. That's not what that means. They don't get to go up
Yeah, I-
higher, they don't get to be denser in that small area.
they just lose that area to be able to build that, whatever the
Correct.
density per acre is.
There were some
That was
nice
just-
ideas around the Abbey, because it's close to Franklin and the T and the, I don't think we'd ever get anybody in the town to accept that output.
Yeah.
So,
And
I don't know.
it's really, I mean, if you're looking at getting to the train station, you've gotta go up, what is it, Arnold Street, out to King or Summer Street, then onto 495. Those are all pretty windy back roads. I used to take them when I did take the T sometimes. And I couldn't get out that way. Whereas, you're putting people right on, the only reason the 495 1A area, you're putting people right on the
Right
highway,
at 495.
like making it not an option for them to go back roads.
so would we change Wampum Corner 1A idea to maybe just that one site
Or,
for this being an overlay on that site, and we
Yeah.
had, that could be 25 acres, it could be 10 acres, it could be whatever it is. Howie is thinking of 100 units.
yeah, I don't think I included that parcel as part of
No,
any of it, but we
How
could.
many acres is the,
Mike, which site is this?
This is the one that's being,
the former, what they know called the former Mara
Oh,
property?
Mara.
Yeah.
yeah,
I thought that was gonna be senior living.
Yes, that's what he wants to
Can't
do.
age restricted.
Can't have age restricted.
Right.
So senior living would count.
But
No.
technically, it's just vacant land right now. And so the underlying zoning still allows, he can either take advantage of the overlay or the special permit for a senior living community.
Right, just
Age
because
restricted.
just because we put the overlay there, doesn't mean that he couldn't go ahead and say, well, I don't care about the overlay, I'm gonna put a senior living community here because the underlying zoning allows it.
But then what if he says, I do want to do the overlay? And we have 363 housing units there. Personally, I hear what Rachel's saying of traffic going towards 495 to the commuter area. But every single person who's gonna live in these 363 units is not going to be commuting to Boston. They're gonna have kids, and they're gonna be going to school, they're gonna go to soccer, and they're going to be going to church. And they're gonna be going through Wampum Corner. And that's my biggest issue with getting it too close to Wampum Corner, is that you're gonna block traffic from West Wrentham.
Which is already,
It's already.
1A is
filled
not
up.
set up for that, for
It's
added
not,
traffic.
and adding like this 363 more potentially cars driving their kids to soccer practice at 5 o'clock on, Tuesday night. is insanity.
To make a,
Could-
make
And that
a bill in,
argument
make a bill in
removes-
HOV lane.
Yeah, that argument then removes the former KOA property and the outlets. If we're using that argument, they're going to the same school though,
Absolutely. Right, you're right.
you know,
Yeah.
then that
There's no
removes
way to
those
get
two,
those one
and it
point.
removes
Right.
Green Street.
If we're at 11 units an acre and he's thinking maybe 100 acres, that's 10 acres. I mean,
No,
100
100
units,
units, yeah.
that's 10
I
acres.
think it's the senior living community, you have to have 20 acres. I think he's just shy of that right now. It's 19 and a half.
Oh, that's all he has?
Yeah, so he has.
Oh, okay.
It's a work.
Yeah, I think 1A is it's a
It's tough.
tough sell. Anything that has to go up 1A to the center of town.
I'm gonna say I worked in Boston for 6 years. I lived in Plainville that whole time, and I took the highway all the time. The only time I took back roads was when Franklin was backed up and there was construction. And that was very rare because I did not like going all those back roads. But for 6 years, and I was on the first train, so I was getting on the train at 5 a.m. So I could have gone through and nobody would be on these back roads. I still went the highway. I am only one of however many people that did, use the train.
But
So
I hear you, but even though this is an MBTA community, it
You're right.
doesn't mean that MBTA commuting people are going to live there.
Correct.
And most people, at least for my neighbors, my household, everybody's working from home,
yeah,
which means they're going to be in and about town doing other types of things.
Mhm.
That's what happens.
It's probably
all
half
the
and half
reason
now.
to have, then you get the greenway built and then they can just ride their bikes back and forth to all parts of town.
So different, so
Sorry.
all three of the sites we just talked about, Wampum Corner, Wampum
Yeah.
Corner. There's another couple of sites on the fringes, the commercial districts. Over by Franklin at the end of Wrentham on 140. Is that a possibility?
So, I mean, you can put it anywhere, there's really, if you want to put it on existing development,
No, there's a
In the-
piece of property that's vacant up there.
Yeah, they've had a couple of proposals that they've come to us to talk about.
All of those
Oh.
entered off of Franklin roads, which we hate.
Right,
industrial,
down past
Road?
industrial.
sure. I know the Franklin residents, when Howard was doing some site exploration on that property, because he owns some properties behind that one. There was quite a commotion about that, so, just FYI,
Franklin residents?
Franklin residents.
Oh, whatever they want.
Rachel kills
I'm-
us on
I'm
that,
trying
cause
to-
Plainville, we're going like, oh, that's going into
I'm
Plainville,
trying to-
okay.
Yeah,
I'm-
yeah, and I'm like, joke's on you, because we're also gonna be considered an adjacent community, so
I'm trying
we'll
to,
throw it right back at you.
Kildare Drive? No.
I'm trying to think of the last time that any of the boards from Franklin reached out to us in Wrentham to ask us what we thought of something they were looking to develop. That was be never.
True.
And I know
Just
I've
saying.
asked this many
So you're
times
not
before,
voters.
and you said it's difficult, but that Eagle Grove, which I think they renamed it now something new, right? That whole development.
Red tail.
Okay, the red tail development.
Mhm.
I know you said that because there's 40B in there and there's so much different types that it would be hard to pull together acreage. But is there like 10 acres that are not affected by the different pockets of stuff? And we could do an overlay on, let's say, 10 acres of that property.
So I did have clarification on that, and the overlay that we set, we can set whatever we want. It is usurping the underlying zoning for whatever it is.
Okay.
So,
'Cause I don't
you
see why
can,
we
whatever
just
you
wouldn't-
want it to be, that's gonna create 15 units per acre, 50 acres, and capacity to create 750 units.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Because those homes are pretty new, if we did 25-acre overlay there, I just can't imagine all those residents getting together to sell all their houses.
Well, and they don't own them, those are all rental.
Are they?
Yeah.
I thought most of those
Duplexes.
were home.
Not the
There's-
red tail, that,
Okay,
those
so
aren't.
whatever is then, the ones that were first built, those.
Okay, those are all home ownership, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Some of them, there's about maybe 30 or, oh gosh, I have to do the math, maybe 50 that are age restricted, but. Yeah,
Yeah, there were two separate developments, one of which was open space preservation.
There's-
That was the
There's
main,
three of those, there's 340Bs in that area. Over Eagle Brook, Black Birch Drive, Partridge Lane.
I'm not talking about
Red
40B, I'm
Fox.
talking about OSPD.
On on Park Street?
No.
Oh.
As part of the Eagle Brook, that was originally an OSPD. And
Oh,
then the 40B was something that he added to adjacent acreage after.
no, all three of, everything that's developed out there is all under a 40B. He may have originally intended it to be OSPD, but, and
That's
some
how it
of
was
them,
permitted.
no, all three of them, there's three different ones out there. Four if you include the rental one.
Okay.
And one of them, you were absolutely right, does include open space though, too.
Right.
As part of that,
And that's different than what I thought it was. Okay.
yeah,
I
was
thought
surprised to see.
originally, most of that was done as an OSPD. And then the 40B was something that got added to other undeveloped acreage that he had that was adjacent to it. I didn't realize that the whole thing fell under the 40B.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I was just looking at the map earlier today, because I was trying to add it to my calculations, seeing what I could do for that one.
Still a lot of units left, 363 on any 25-acre parcel.
Or if it's all 50, or if it equals out to be 50 acres, again, you're creating an overlay district. The underlying, what's there existing doesn't really matter. You know, because yes, it can be redeveloped. If somebody does want to go in there and buy up all of these single-family homes, you know, that's fine. And then we would, the only, thing that I think of is that we may lose our, the 40B type of thing, but that's something down the line. I don't know if that's actually a thing. That's just my, Chicken Little.
40B.
because those three projects were all 40B projects, and those units count towards our SHI.
Okay.
So
You're going back to the Eagle Brook.
Yes,
Okay,
sorry, I
okay.
apologize.
Nope,
Yeah, that would be my only concern, is that the state may take that away, but they
Right,
could not,
because-
they.
Why would they take it away? Because we're zoning over an existing developed property?
And we're not creating it as, I don't know, that's just the thought that I have. I don't think they could, but
Because the whole point of the MBTA community thing was supposedly to develop more housing to theoretically make, put more housing on the market, makes them more affordable, which I don't think is really gonna work. But then if you then,
it's a different
Do-
type of affordable.
you do that over something that's already designated as
They're not getting the benefit.
big A, capital A, affordable. See, I listen.
They're not getting the benefit.
Now you're right, right, because I've already said that we couldn't include
Yeah.
Ledgeview, or not Ledgeview, the Point at whatever it's called these days. The apartments up there.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
I
that's-
mean, so we can, and you can include existing, developments, if you wanna, and that's, I don't know. the
No, I'm not
acreage
talking about
on
the
that.
front part, I'm
No,
talking
no, I'm
about
talking about the
the
Lakeview as well.
apartments.
Yeah,
I thought we were told we couldn't because that was done as 40B. And so
again, that's the
therefore-
concern that I have, there's nothing written in stone that the state has said this. That
Oh, I
we're
thought it
gonna
was
take
part of the
away your
guideline.
40B whatever. It's just my concern
Okay.
in designating
Well, again-
40B projects, but
Right,
we can try it, I have no idea. The state hasn't said anything one way or the other, but I can only imagine, is all.
That Eagle Brook is honestly my first choice, because I just don't see it being mowed down and redeveloped in the near future.
And there's a fair amount of density there.
It's pretty dense, it's already laid out, it's planned, it checks all the boxes, it's close to Franklin, it's a family community. It's gonna have the commercial aspect to it, they wanna put daycares.
probably one of the closest pieces of property in the whole town to an actual commuter station.
Yeah.
The Franklin Center.
Not to a highway, so people would have to go. I mean, if they're in town going to schools and shops, that's one thing. If they're going to commute, which maybe half the population is now, I don't know. Then they'd have to go King Street, or they'd have to come through town.
if we're doing, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Downtown
College.
Franklin has a-
It's a very small one, that fills up pretty fast.
And it's
I was-
only, what, 2 miles tops?
Yeah.
Talking about for the T.
Yeah.
I was thinking of it drove, they'd have to come through town to get to the highway, depending on which way they're gonna go, maybe. Or they go up to King Street.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Hey, Mike, with any luck, that could trigger the Park Street, intersection change.
I don't live down there anymore.
I'm just saying, that's something that we, that we fought long and hard to get it where it is, because we couldn't get it any further along, right?
So what
And
could
that's the
down,
same thing, I mean, if you put it down by the outlets and there's significant traffic that winds up getting added coming up into town through Wampum Corner, do you trigger some kind of changes along Route 1A? These are things we don't control.
Really, but we
On
all,
Route 40, we don't control, right? So,
like if we ended up with,
Flyover lane from 121
yeah,
down.
if we ended up with a 4-lane road on 1A coming into the center of town, I'd feel like we blew something.
yeah,
I don't,
I don't think that's likely.
That would also mean the state having shell out money to improve a road. So
that needs, that corner needs a lot of work too,
where
existing.
is that on the tip list?
Right,
We
Well-
still can't get the slip ramp to 495 built.
So if you go to the mall
Hey,
site for
when
a
I went to
second,
bid,
if you go to the mall or the other retail,
mhm,
to me, a developer could come in or Simon could say, hey, our rents are reducing. We're gonna carve that out. You got an overlay, we're gonna build housing here. I see those as like slam dunks for a developer.
mhm.
And I don't know that we wanna put forward a slam dunk, that somebody can get permitted, it's got a wastewater treatment plant, I get concerned about that.
That's
Yeah.
been, right, that's been my concern with that all along, that's probably one of the easiest to be able to.
So are we saying as a committee, we're not in favor of,
I was just voicing
The
my
outlets?
personal. My personal opinion would be not the outlets themselves. Although it was proposed to do not necessarily the outlets, but some of the properties around the outlets. With the thought that putting high density housing within easy reach of the outlets might help feed the outlets and keep that more sustainable over the long run. I don't
Yeah.
know if that would work or not. But if you've got a couple hundred apartment units within walking distance of the outlets, people that can walk there don't have to deal with the traffic part of driving into the outlets. It might make it more a more pleasant process for them, and it might help feed the outlets and keep their numbers up. I don't know.
And those, the Simeons have 2 remaining parcels on Green Street that haven't been permitted, that they have said they would, want to, in the future, approach the planning board to have it rezoned to residential.
Okay.
Because they do want to develop that. There's a lot of wetlands on those last 2, sites, so that's, just keep that in consideration, the lots may equal out to be 60 acres, but,
The buildable part of it's significantly less.
question, the 363. If we're on 25
Back to
acres,
math.
Uh-oh.
Great.
no, this is 72 units per 5-acre parcel. It's 70, if you had to do 25 5-acre blocks,
Yeah, that's if, septic and parking
so
isn't a thing.
363 divided by
Everybody's
20,
taking
by 5,
Helicopters.
by 5 5-acre units, that's 72 units per 5-acre block. What if we took that philosophy and took 5 acres here and 5 acres over there and 5, like, spread them out through town? Cause I don't know that you can build 72 units on a 5-acre.
You can't on any of
Discount.
the town, any of these parcels, you can't, because we don't have water.
Right.
We don't have sewer.
Yeah.
All of that has to
Okay.
be taken out of, if they wanna do a well, that's gonna have to take out from developable land. Septic, definitely. They're gonna have to do on-site septic.
So what if we broke up this 363 instead of trying to find one parcel, find 5 acre parcels in town? And those would
that
be the next
and that would
tranche.
require building 5 sets of infrastructure. I'm not sure if that's,
Yeah,
but you know what I mean.
But when you
You'd
start
have
to
to
put
have a
your setback
wastewater
on, your septic, your all of a sudden,
Plan for each one of them instead of one that's gonna handle
right,
all of the units.
I'm trying to make it. I don't know if that makes it harder to build. Or if you're
I guess-
going to build on a 5 acre parcel, you'll never get 72 units.
Yeah.
But the zoning is there.
right.
So how do we make it so
That's the
that,
that's the same argument for the 495 1A area as well. And I know you say, oh, somebody could come in and buy each one of them. Two of those parcels are condos with 16, 12 residents in each. You have to get all those people, 24, to agree. And what if somebody says, well, I want $2 million for my property? A developer can't be like, no, I'm only gonna give you 500,000.
Right.
Okay, I'm not gonna sell.
assemblages happen all the time. That's how
Well, right.
developments get done.
But
all the
I'm,
time.
I'm just saying, like, this is something that's, that back parcel over, remember they wanted to do the mini ledge view. I mean, that's been sitting out there for a long time too, and that's something where he
Where's
was, gosh, it was right on the edge of 495. It like abutted 495 and like a small portion
Oh,
of.
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
One.
Across
Became
from
it-
the old Normandy Farms.
Okay.
No,
Oh,
isn't that where Howie is?
1A. Oh, was that a Normandy Farms? I don't know.
Normandy Farms was,
No, like the nursery you're talking.
right,
Across from the that
Across-
was,
Yeah.
that was, what were they called?
not Normandy Farms. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Northland.
Northland Farms.
Yes, yeah, you
Okay,
were.
correct, across from Northland Farms. I had the right place, had the
Yep.
wrong name. Yeah, and they had proposed. It's because there's some residential properties in front of
Mhm.
doing, something that, and yeah, there were a couple, that came through a couple of times.
Yeah.
Came before the EDC.
We don't have any consultancy money we can use with deals, do we?
No,
We don't have any.
it would have to come from town money, and I've heard that is not,
I'd
acceptable.
love for them to help us out, say, here's a 5 acre parcel. Here's what you could do with it with the restrictions of. Setbacks and sewer tree, whatever, septic and all
Okay,
that.
yeah, do all the work.
Because if
with the
you said-
developer. That's great.
If this 363. Isn't 363 at the end, it's half that
Yeah.
because you can't physically do it?
Right.
How do we make it so that it's hard?
And
even
that,
to
and
do
I,
that?
and I can make that argument for some other grant money, but I need you guys to make a decision as to where you want me to
Yeah.
focus on that for. If you wanna do 2 sites, if you wanna do 3 sites, I need to know that now. So that way I can help hone that down on whatever we have for that. I do have some grants for other things that I could maybe reach out to those grant organizations and see, would this fall within that?
I'm just thinking the smallest that we can make this, the harder it is to get many units on it, right? So if 5 acres is the smallest. Next tranche we can have,
Do you have any parcels in mind?
maybe the commercial zone at the end of. Over by Franklin, maybe. There's another commercial zone. Over by, right, somewhere. I don't, but I was just thinking about it.
The one thought that comes to my mind about this, because this is, I think, what the select board calls paper zoning. Something that's never gonna fly, never gonna get passed. Is this gonna pass the state?
Well, they say we can have 5 acre parcels.
Say and pass are 2 different things. I mean, I love the idea. I think it'll never happen, which is what ultimately I think we all want. But is the state just gonna kick it back and say, try again, and then,
We'll keep throwing out ideas.
yeah,
About here,
Well,
about here.
and I agree with you, I'm hesitant.
Yeah, cause you throw it out there, it's me that has to go into all this
Well,
stuff.
some
At this
acres
point, it
in-
is just,
for that
it's
area.
just me at this point.
Cause I've looked at the very north end of Route 1, and there's 7 acre parcels there that, yes, we have rezoned to Chris, that we have to rezone back. Or not, I don't know how that works Does it have to get rezoned out?
The underlying, you would have, if the underlying zoning doesn't allow for residential, you would have to change that.
And if we did a 5-acre lot at the very, think at the very end, north end near the Foxborough line, where it's starting on. And we took one of those spots, that's 7 point something acres, and there's no way they're gonna build there. So that there's one lot, right?
There. Put it over in the, put it,
Right, is the state gonna look at that and say, well, that's not. That's,
but they haven't guidelined that out, have they?
I'm
No.
sorry?
They haven't put it in their guidelines that we can't do 5-acre parcels.
No, that is one of the.
Right.
you know,
One of the things they said, we can, the other
What I'm
25 has to be broken into.
but there are other considerations, it's not just that it's a 5-acre. You know, Chris Clutchman,
Mhm, yes,
when she did her presentation to the select board, said, and I remember her saying it because I had the same thought. The state is not going to support a project that is designed
to fail.
to fail. They will, if you come up with zoning areas that you're specifically choosing because you know they can't feasibly be built, the state will not approve.
It can be built, get a developer who can come in and build them. Why?
Economically though, economically, and that's.
But then what they're saying is then you just have to get to the best site in town and put it all there. That's not the intent.
No, not the best site, but you can't intentionally pick the worst.
Picking one next to the T station up in Foxborough, right on the line. Go up Route 1, get to the Foxborough T station. I just think we have arguments we can use.
And that's fine if those arguments fly. I'm,
This is the north end of Route 1. Here's 101 Washington, 301 Washington together are 7¼ acres. And I believe that's like junkyard land. And then we've got another 20 acres here. If we keep going down Washington, it's separated by state land, a tiny little sliver of state land comes in. But I mean, here we have 27 acres, not together, but separated that we could.
Is that all part of the CRISP though?
No, none
No.
of that, a few of those are part of, I think 2 or 3 properties are part of Chris, but the rest are not.
I guess, I
The
mean,
rest
that's,
are the commercial Route 1 North, which that one was a little bit more, that zone, I remember the uses that we allowed up there were a little bit more restricted because it is right across from Crocker Pond.
right, yeah, the Route 1 north was basically south of Thurston Street.
Yes, yeah.
That was the dividing. There's south of Thurston was where we were looking to concentrate more of the commercial.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess it also gets into a philosophical question, right? Are we trying to make this easy? Or are we trying to meet the bylaw and not end up with 363 units in the town that we can't afford to have?
Well, and none of this is easy though. I don't think any of these options are easy. They still have to put the money behind it. They still have to do the design. They still have to, find a way to pay for water, sewer, none of this is easy by any means, even if it's a vacant piece of land, because Wrentham doesn't have any sewer. I mean, that's a huge thing for as we're seeing down here for this, I think it's a total of maybe 300 units in total for downtown altogether, with the townhouses and the apartments and that's at least 1 acre to 2 acres of land that they're having to set aside for a wastewater treatment facility. And he said it's at least $2 million or something, so I'm just, there is, you've been on this side as well. There's a developer looks at a return on investment, like, is this really worth it? And you're absolutely right. They can play the long game and just pick up pieces one by one, over those
If
years.
we could find pieces that were not together, that could do that. Then, we're not saying you can't build it, just build what you can do on 5 acres of land. And that's gonna limit the number of units that get built on that 5 acres of land.
And I think the argument can be made that we are making some of it really easy, because look, we're giving you 25 acres of prime property right downtown in the center of Wrentham that is vacant.
Mhm.
And we're saying, go ahead, take it with the limit of the cap of 8 units per acre, but that's the easy part. The rest, it's hard for us to find the rest, so I mean, it's not like we're hiding the property.
You are, yeah, and you're not, because the state is gonna look and see, and they're gonna be, I have a feeling that.
So if we took,
But,
you're saying if we took 5.
you know what, it's,
I'm just asking.
It's what you think is gonna get passed at our meeting, you know? You're right, I don't think any of this is.
If why would the state say if you pick 5 acres over there and 5 over there and 5 over there? You get 5 of those parcels that they're gonna look at and go, well, you're anti-build, so you can't, I'm not approving. Why?
No,
Why
but if
would they
that,
say
if you've
that?
got that, if that 5 acres is a junkyard. And that 5 acres is,
Why does it matter if it's a junkyard?
because the cost to clean that junkyard up to make it.
We're gonna say that's an incentive for somebody to clean up the junkyard that's in our town. We want them to build residential, because we want that junkyard.
And they'll have beautiful views of a proper pond, it's a gorgeous place to live.
To me, I think that's a better sell than trying to overlay something that's already built. I think if you try to put it on something that's already built, it feels to me like they're gonna slam that back at us.
How big is the Arbitage property,
Armitage property,
the one that's just. you
right
know,
next to
right
the
next-
KOA.
Right,
I don't think that's very,
that's not a lot.
I thought I
they have
can't
two
doing it on overlay if something is
parcels.
built, but I think that one's gonna be a tougher sell for the state.
I mean, we could do both, we could do 5 acres over.
8
we could do
acres.
5 acres under one, you
And then
know?
they have one that's
Just
split
try.
zoned.
Maybe they won't
over
like
here.
one, but will like the other, and then. Who knows?
And they offer up 5 acres options, so
12. So 8 and 12
So-
acres,
So,
2 parcels. One of them is split zoned, but you know. Do overlay.
where's this?
The Armitage property, which is another junkyard,
former junkyard.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
think
Let's
it's,
clean those up. Let's put these 5 acres on every. There we have.
Is that Route 1 as well?
when I,
it's 1A. So we're
After
adding
you-
more traffic.
after you go past the outlets, you go past what used to be the KOA, right there on the left. I remember when it was still inactive.
So that brings up a good thing. Maybe we spot some of these sites away from 1A. 140 can handle traffic. 1 can handle traffic.
I don't know, I've been on 140 trying to get out on Creek Street or Park Street and. That's pretty busy to me, but
But it's,
a lot of the roads in Wrentham are all, because everybody comes through here, which is great. They're busy.
well, if we had to make
And not
improvements to a road, I'd rather do 140 if the state was willing to pay for it and the developer had to do it.
Yeah.
Then I just think 1A is just. It's not in great shape, but it reminds me of what Wrentham, why I moved here. Country road.
Yeah, and I guess when I look at that portion of 1A, it would be great if there was a plan for its future development. Whereas right now, there is no plan for it. It would be great if there was a cohesive vision, similar to your downtown, for that area, to make it, you know, sort of like I don't know, just like another gem when you're coming into town. That, you know, that's the other argument, I guess.
Gems come in many forms.
You get that water park again.
Jim, you've been quiet. Maybe we've talked too much and we didn't let you in, but thoughts?
No, it was fine. I mean, I didn't have anything to add. We're putting a lot of ideas out, but I don't know if we're heading towards anything.
Nope, definitely heading far away from things, and
Well,
it's awesome because there's nothing else that's going on in the planning department right now.
You're being sarcastic.
Yes.
I would say, we've got. The center of town, we need answers for on what are these calcs that work
That's the.
with the reductions.
Direction.
That'll give us an answer. It feels to me like we've kind of said, hey, these things are not at the top of our list. Some of us. 1A area corridor. Maybe not the mall, the outlets because of the traffic coming up 1A into town. But maybe there's some other sites, that could be looked at as smaller sites that maybe we don't end up having to have 363 units because of the size of them are spotted throughout the town, so it's not an impact on any one part of town. 363 in one part of town is an impact, no matter what you do, traffic, waters.
Yeah, you're never gonna see that amount.
I know,
Especially
but
in this area because of, but
But if you had 50 units over there and 50 over there and 50 over here and 50, it's like spread out and they can be nice little development, units, and I don't know, I feel like that might be something we need to look at, is what else can we do with smaller parcels that,
To look quickly. I know, I'm reading your mind.
so so let's jump off sites, because I personally am not at all pressured by a pre-approval. I talked to a number of people, including Board of Selectmen. I know that's a touchy subject, but I'm gonna bring it up anyways, who are not interested in rushing this through a pre-approval process. Getting it right, to me, is far more important than trying to package something up and send it to the state. Just my opinion, but I've heard
it's
that.
not packaging it up. That makes it seem like we just threw stuff in there.
But have we
you know.
taken the time to really write the bylaw with what we want to see in this thing, with the
Have you looked
amenities?
at the bylaw?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I haven't seen any comments from you, which that's why
Because
that's why
I was
asked.
trying to figure out what it was doing. It felt,
Okay,
I'll read it again, but it
Yeah.
felt just like generic to me.
So.
it is. I will follow up and
Okay.
send it to
No,
everybody.
no, that's fine. As
Yeah.
long as
Because
I
if we
understand.
pick, now, if we can get the town center and we get all that right, zones all underlying is right, and we know what we want there, that's one thing. And if we're gonna do five acre sites, then we don't need probably don't need a lot in terms of amenities and however that bylaw is gonna look from the. If we're gonna do 125 acre site with 360 units on it, we have to write a pretty good criteria for what we wanna have, in my opinion, about.
Parks, playgrounds, walking
Yeah,
trails.
all of that.
Which, are you saying if you put it on the one area,
If
Right.
you
which
did,
would
if
make it then a real neighborhood, which
you
is.
did
what-
the outlet,
Yeah,
said, okay, the rest of it's going to the outlet, you got 25 acres, we're gonna put 363 units up, or some number.
You
mhm.
need to set aside X number of acres for green space. You need to have
To me,
walking trails.
Yeah.
You need to, make it a neighborhood.
we're not ready to write that, in my opinion, to get it submitted for whatever the date is, the 7th or the 21st, or even in August. And have it reviewed properly so that we know what it is, so that's more work. Now, if we say, hey, we're not gonna go with 25 acres in one spot, we're gonna look at this other option, or a third option.
If we forego the pre-approval,
Hmm.
what do we use as options available? What,
You have
What
to
is
do
the
seven,
pen-
you have to cite 750.
750, so to
Your
get the
unit
reduction,
capacity,
we
we have
have
to
to do the
750,
pre-approval.
yep.
Why can't we, you can't do,
If you wanna do the mandatory mixed use and get the 25% reduction, you have to
to
get
do the
pre-approval
pre-approval.
for that.
Right.
Do you have to
pre-approval.
get pre-approval for all 50 acres, or can we get pre-approval for just the 25 and say? we're
As
still
I
gonna
understand it,
adjust
it's all 50 acres, but I already have it down on here as a clarification on that.
is there a deadline at which point we can't submit for pre-approval?
Yes, if the town meeting is November 18th, it's 90 days prior to that,
What if we miss that?
then we don't,
Can we submit for pre-approval and go to Springtown meeting and we just,
then we're in non-compliance in
As
January.
of January
But-
1st.
And then you get sued, so
Well-
that's,
maybe, those are opinions.
Okay, sure.
Right? Cause there's
Rentham's had its name out there, so
We
I
put a
think
target
we're,
on our own back, which, so,
Well- are we saying, or do we know?
but you're absolutely right, I do not have a.
Could we
magic eight
submit,
ball.
once we got it all,
at home.
Thank you.
once we got it all done,
answer hazy. try
and
to
it
get-
was not in time for November?
Yep.
Could we then submit it for pre-approval, even though it's past the November timeline?
Sure,
And you're saying, do you know if they'll review it? Or you're saying we're.
I have no idea.
Might be.
Again,
Asking.
clarification, yeah, I wrote it down.
Cause they could change the rules tomorrow, cause they've been doing that all along. Move the
This is,
goalposts.
and as I have stated, it's a new law. I am not the Attorney General, I'm not, EOHLC. I don't have a thing of case law to go on for this. I'm going based on what I've heard over the past 3 years and how it's sort of been explained to us over the past three years. But whatever you feel is going to get passed at town meeting, that's what you should go with. So long as it meets the, the guidelines, the 15, 50, 750.
That's assuming that made a big assumption,
That we don't do that.
that everybody wants it approved at town meeting.
You only need a simple majority to pass at town meeting.
Yep, they made it easy to pass this one. Don't need 2/3
That's right.
majority.
So next steps, we've got some work to do and to find out some information. I mean, one site versus 5 smaller sites or some other version of that, is that worth pursuing information on to see what we can find, where we'd slot those 5? Or 2
Sure.
or versions of?
Where are you gonna look for that information?
Well, I got a list right here from of 5 or 6 or
Can you
7.
email that?
Yeah, I'll type it up, I'll send it to you.
I would think if we put our heads together, we could look across the town and say, hey, there's 5 acres that's in the north, south, east, west corners that could be rezoned, that might work. I just think that strategy may have some legs because it's going to be it's gonna meet the criteria, it feels like, because they've said you can break it down to 5-acre lot sizes. And it will limit the amount with the setbacks and all the restrictions on sewer and water, whatever else. And it doesn't put a huge impact on any one part of town.
I know we were talking about trying to stay away from 1A, but I do think that we should at least look at the Armitage properties too. It's 20 acres. I mean, it's only two
Yeah, 2 parcels.
parcels, but
And do
20
you,
acres.
you know,
total.
also want to include the KOA property? I know, touchy subject, we do have somebody, that parcel's been sitting vacant and they are looking to do sort of like a, flash sale type of thing on that property.
Yeah.
We do have people interested in developing it as residential.
That parcel?
How many acres is that?
I think if you add up that whole kind of area, it might be about 20.
So the KOA and the Armitage properties alone are 40 acres.
But you really want 536 units on a piece of property?
It's on the Plainville
Are
side.
you going, are you?
That's what they say
Are
to
they
me.
going to be able to build 563 units? on
Whatever
those
it
acres?
is,
That's
it's a lot of people in one spot that, and then, like you said, have to come up 1A to the center of town. To the schools, I mean, I just think one big development or even 2 big developments is just. It's just asking for us to have this monstrosity of housing.
Well, when I was doing the compliance model, I've only ever put it at 2.5 stories. So similar to what the downtown is proposing for their front units. Or the Criterion property is proposing for their front units.
You mentioned that, the only place.
And
you
then
know
it's
more.
also 15 units per acre, it's a 15% density because all of Wrentham pretty much is very few areas that are not within a watershed protection district, aquifer protection district, sorry. Which requires 15 units per, 15, why do I keep saying that? Because I keep going on 15 impervious. And if they want to go more than that, it requires a special permit.
But this is as of right.
But the underlying zoning still requires them to do
Okay.
that. That's also
Thought
another
it kinda nixed.
overlay. That's another overlay though.
Next a lot of our review, I thought. As of right.
No. There's still other zones that adhere to that, like that, so that is another overlay zone. That doesn't usurp that overlay zone either. Cause that has to do with watershed, protection or wellhead protection, which is mandated by state law we have in place. So that one I know for sure doesn't, I don't think usurps.
Question, we
At all.
mentioned 2.5 stories. The only zoning we have that could go higher
Mhm.
is commercial, right? Up to,
C3, I think, which is where the point is.
so we'd want to stay away from that and parts of the Route 1.
Correct. That
Can
is
go
up to,
higher.
yeah, up to 60.
Well, they had footnotes all over the place for the height.
Yes, yes, something that I,
C2 is 4 stories.
yeah. Yep, yep, outlets is a.
3 stories in a C3 with a 10 note. I don't know what that was.
Oh.
One you want to stay away from is C2. C1 has a note, which I didn't read. So we just want to watch out if we're doing that, that we don't get into a zone where we can go, they can actually get that many units because they can go.
So that's then the case of. You're talking about the underlying zoning as opposed to the overlay zoning.
Yeah.
The overlay zone. If they wanna do 6 stories, I'm just saying. 6 stories, that's what's allowed in the underlying zoning, but the overlay only allows 2.5. They can't say, oh, I wanna do the overlay, but I wanna take advantage of this. They can't pick and choose. They have to either do a project under the underlying zoning. Or the overlay.
You don't think the state would have a problem with saying the underlining 6 stories and you're making them stay at 2.5?
Not in what I have read about it. The only thing that I know, and again, when I've done the compliance models, I've put in that 15% impervious, or not impervious. Impervious. Oh my God, it's just too late for me right now.
We'll call it here shortly.
Yeah. And we've gotten to that. I gotta get that.
Okay. Well, I don't know if we haven't solved anything, but I think we brought up some really good points and thoughts and things to consider as we kind of move this in the
Yeah,
next meeting or two, and we can keep another one of these meetings on in between if we want to keep forming the ideas.
mhm.
Yep.
And then I just also recommend taking a look at your master plan, taking a look at other plans and studies. And then, again, looking at and I know we're gonna differ on this, but looking at the intent of what this law is. So, when something says good for families, yes, it means don't set bedroom counts or, limit the size.
They've already told
But
us.
what does that also mean in the more fuzzy or the more type of thing? What is good for families? What do you think is good for families? A family with dogs, family with kids, single.
Well, that's the problem,
Family.
by saying good for families. They haven't said what that means.
Right.
And they've left it purposely murky because they want to be able to look and. Because anything they put in writing. Is
We'll
then,
find a way.
is then in writing and and you can say, but look, right here, you said we can do this or we can't do that. And if they
Yeah.
leave it murky, then they can say, well, that's not really what it means. And
Yeah,
they're the state, they get to do stuff like that.
yeah.
So,
No, I don't know if 15 acres per unit, 750 units on 50 acres is good for families either, because the first thing I think of is like the 40B apartments. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just think that density becomes,
the ones at the end of Madison, yeah, I look at that as. I wouldn't, I mean, I understand, maybe that's what some people have to do if they've got kids. I certainly wouldn't want that to be a goal of, I wanna live in a place like that because I've got.
no, but that's what you could end up with if somebody compiles enough land. And they could put a sewer treatment plant on it, and they could build those units, you
That has
could
a
end up
sewer, that
on.
has a sewer treatment facility that's shared with that whole
Right.
subdivision
Right,
for all those parcels.
but you give them a big enough
And that's
piece of
also
land.
40B too, so they were allowed to
I
go
know,
very close. That whole back end, oof.
you
that's
give them
scary.
another big parcel though, besides downtown, or one
Yeah.
big parcel. It opens up a lot of doors to what can be developed. reasonably by a
Yeah.
developer at a reasonable cost for a
right.
lot of units.
And I feel like what the board has sort of been, you know, sort of pondering, or maybe is, I think it would help if you sort of know where you want to put this, then those things, you could come up with some sort of a mock plan for that, to sort of understand how that's going to look. But right now, I'm looking at 25 and then 5 acre parcels somewhere throughout town. That's not something that I can sort of give, you know, me or whoever it is,
I think we can.
you know, so helping to put that on paper. I know that's something that select board has already been, tried to look at it, the 5 acre parcels. Nobody has submitted anything. Joanna, thank you. Finally, you've sent something in. I appreciate that. You know, hopefully that adds up to it, you know, that type of stuff.
I think it's a strategy that's worth pursuing.
I think also nobody wants to be the first ones to stick their neck out and say, hey, take so-and-so's property. They've
Yeah.
got 5 nice acres, you know? We're in a tough position no matter how you slice
But
it.
it's
Right.
not, it's not taking anyone's
I
property.
know, but it feels.
The state,
They can,
yeah.
you can designate it, that doesn't mean that they have to sell it to somebody who wants to build that, that's, you know. At least at this point, the state's not requiring stuff to be built.
And I find that hard to believe they would take away property rights. And, you know, by eminent domain, all of these properties throughout 177 communities. I don't, that I feel is a big stretch.
You have more confidence than I do.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be very tired. Good, any more?
No, but re-examine the smaller property, sort of proposal that you talked about. Yeah, oh, no, because if they have to build separate infrastructure on each of these, it definitely makes them very cost prohibitive. Cost challenged, let's put it that way.
Or for 5, it could lower the number of units that actually get put on there, so the density.
Sure.
We meet the density by zoning, we lower the density by practicality.
Exactly. It only has to be allowed on paper, it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Well, they also have to all be run through this compliance model too, and, you know, so it's
Yeah,
so
we got
the
10
sooner I get those items.
We got
the
10
sooner I
years
can
to work on multiple options with the state.
Okay, yep,
Just wear them down. Jim, any
wearing down,
thoughts?
that's what you're doing at this point.
Any last-
No, I'm good, thank you.
Joanne, anything else? Rachel, anything? Else? No, you're done. You're overdone? You're cooked? All right,
Move that we adjourn.
we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second,
Second. All in favor, say no. Roll call vote, Mr. Wood,
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence.
aye.
Good night, aye. All in favor, 3 in favor.